All right, this is the Nova Talks podcast. Welcome, Jose. And why don't we start off with a quick introduction from you?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Name's Jose Cervino, founder and CEO of Cervino. Yes, that's my last name, but it's a family office, family business. We do growth partnerships and acquisitions, specifically in the B2B tech firm space, between $500,000 and $3 million in revenue to get them to 10 million in revenue.
Awesome.
Should I say a bit more?
Go for it.
So my background is varied, very varied. I grew up around entrepreneurs, and in many ways, I had to learn the tough way how to run businesses when my family wasn't around. But that made me a bit stronger. So by the time that I was 18, I went to London for an undergrad in architecture. Over there, it's the second toughest degree after medicine. Uh, I graduated with honors, discovered tech, AI specifically. And I was just like, dude, I have to do something with this. So I came back, became a software engineer, worked at Google, Point 72, in different capacities in the AI space, building actual machine learning models alongside those engineers. And then then took over my parents' businesses when COVID hit. When COVID hit, I think you remember, Joey, everything kind of just stopped, right? School, everything, work as well. And I had to take it over. But I made a negative into a positive. I took over the family businesses, and I since then scaled to 7 figures in revenue in less than 12 months. Scaled to 7 to 8 figures worth of revenue and assets under management altogether. And since then, I've been helping grow businesses.
Amazing. Great introduction. And a question about your company. How would you describe the mission of your company with one sentence?
With one sentence, that's a good question. I'm helping people achieve their dreams. Same way I helped my parents achieve their dream of an early retirement and knowing that everything is taken care of uh, through for better or for worse. That's what I do.
Did your childhood dreams influence what you're doing now?
Honestly, dude, I think so on some level because when I was younger, when I was like 8, 10 years old, I wanted to do anything and everything. Right? I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a scientist, an astrophysicist at some point. But one thing that kept popping up was this dream of those I don't know if you remember those, but they're like the Lincoln Town cars, the ones that the executives roll around it in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
I always imagined myself being one of those in New York City because I lived just outside of New York City. I was just like, man, one day I'm going to be one of those guys. Um, and I found a way.
Well, since you want to do so many things, what is the most absurd or impractical business idea that you ended up pursuing when you got older?
Most impractical one, impractical, absurd. Two different, two different qualifiers here. The most absurd one so far has been uh, a funded B2B SaaS startup that I was a lead engineer for. It was started by like this MIT MBA grad, and he was an ex Bain executive, Bain, McKinsey, those type of like consulting companies. He graduated from Cambridge, all these things, and we were trying to digitize one of the most analog industries in existence, the mining industry, right? The big trucks, like written tickets everywhere. They would have like stacks of it like this, right? And they would have to go through all that manually. It would take weeks to look something up. And we were trying to essentially piece it all together. It's like a $200 billion TAM, like total addressable market. So that might be the most absurd, other than the one that I'm doing right now, where I'm acquiring businesses with creative financing strategies. So like $0 down, like acquiring them like that, growth acquisitions, and being a growth partner when my background isn't really in marketing, but I figured out a way.
What's the most out there marketing idea that you've implemented that you've seen work?
Most out there marketing strategy. I would have to say maybe the podcast. Most people don't think of a podcast as a good lead magnet, and like all the different ways you can use it. That is one of the best ones I've come across so far.
Okay. So, if you could delete one myth about entrepreneurship, what would it be?
These are good questions. One myth that that freedom is what you get. You don't get freedom when you're an entrepreneur. What you get is the freedom to choose what you do every single moment, but that isn't ultimately the type of freedom that most people actually think about, right? It's the freedom to make life on your own terms, but you're always locked in 24/7, 365, but you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, it's your own terms, but your own terms have to be strict.
Yeah.
So, I get you. And what's one decision that you made purely off intuition throughout your life that paid off the biggest?
Probably this podcast.
Good
Um,
answer.
okay, no, but seriously, I think, oh man, that's a good one too. Purely off of intuition. Going the tech route, because back then it was like 2015 and people were still talking about tech, but they were talking about SaaS, but they weren't talking about AI. They weren't really talking about crypto either. I was there when Bitcoin was like 20 or $30 a pop, right? And then we were playing around with it. Granted, I mean, I'll disclose it, but we were playing around with Silk Road back in the day, some of my friends and I, and it was crazy what you could do with that stuff. Um, Nothing illegal, of course, but that was based off of intuition. I said, okay, if AI, if this is the direction that the world is going in, if we're going from mass manufacturing to mass personalized in some capacity, and all of these different technologies are going to converge at some point, then this is the direction. AI is going to be probably the cornerstone of it because intelligence is the bottleneck in a lot of ways. So I was like, all right, architecture, love it, but I have to do something bigger. So intuition guided me in that direction.
Okay. Going back to what you said earlier about the freedom, what does success look like for you now versus what you thought it would look like when you first started business?
I thought success was going to look like Maseratis, Lambos, and gold watches. And it still does look like that. That stuff's fun. Don't get me wrong, that stuff is fun. And there's a time and place for it for sure. But the freedom that I see now that really is in my heart is seeing my parents healthy, happy, and peaceful. And being able to be the man who can take care of them and everything that they've had to take on. They were immigrants, right? For better, for worse, right? Depending on your stance, but they were immigrants. They sacrificed everything to get to this country. They started from absolutely nothing. My father was came across the Atlantic on a small, dingy shipping boat from Spain, right? And he slept in a cave when he first got here, and he didn't know a lick of English, but he had to find a way. And he turned himself into something that, like, I don't think he even imagined he could turn himself into. My mother as well, business owner of more than a decade. Um, it's and to see that I can handle things for them. That's the success that I see now.
Love that. So you changed a lot in the last 10 years, obviously. So if you could go 10 years into the future and talk to yourself, what's one question that you would ask?
How could I have helped Joey better?
That's
I think
a
that's
good
good,
question.
right? Um, Other than that, I think probably what like one decision internally, mindset wise, would I, do I need to make now that otherwise would cost me years?
Okay. That's a good question. When it comes to your business, going back into the present and what you're doing with that, what is the part of your business that keeps you up at night the most? Is it the sales, the support, the product, the fulfillment? What is it?
It's a really good question. I think ultimately it almost always comes down to sales, almost always. right? Brand then thereafter, right? Because the brand turns into the sale. But before you have brand, you have only sales. So then if they're both kind of like the same thing, they're symbiotic in a way, then it's like, how do I protect the brand? How do I build the brand? Is the brand going to last? How long, right? And then thereafter, am I going to be able to keep it going? The answer is always yes, but you know, that's one of those things, right?
And throughout your sales funnel, what is the part of the funnel that you think is the biggest bottleneck right now? Could use improvement.
Biggest bottleneck right now, I think right now it's probably presentation, right? Because I have too many calls on my calendar right now. A lot of people interested, but how do I really get through to them? I guess in presentation is actually just a derivative of communication. How can I better communicate myself to these people that I know need the help, that I know I can help? How do I get through to them? Becomes a question.
Do you have any sales reps right now that you're working with?
I'm doing it solo, and that is for I have a reason for that. I have a thesis that I can put together an AI workforce that can get me this current iteration of the business to 10 million ARR without any additional uh, like full-time hires or anything like that. I might have contractors here or there, consultants to jump in, but I think it's possible.
That's super interesting. So it's kind of a challenge with yourself.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I like that. Okay. And what kind of AI technologies are you using in order to complete that mission?
Good question. Um, ChatGPT, of course, OpenAI as the foundation of it. The deep research is killer right now. Um, I think that's the core of it. From there, it's just using one platform or the other for what I'm noticing is like the conversion of one asset type, quote unquote asset type, into another. So if I have an hour long of video, how do I then convert that into a series of long form, short form clips, videos, and written content that actually is on brand and stays consistent throughout it all without it becoming AI slop, I think is the main idea. Like how do I the platforms kind of come and go, basically. But
Okay.
that's the core of it.
So it sounds like you're using AI for more internal operations versus customer facing tasks. Are you planning on using it for primarily customer facing tasks in the future as you continue to grow your customer base?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'm gonna use it more often, especially when voice is now, especially nowadays, right? Voice is becoming like indistinguishable from your standard like person on a phone call. I think that's where I would use it for CSM as like a touch point, saying, okay, we're always here 24/7, but Jose needs to sleep, even if it's just 4 hours. Um, then just call our AI, and they'll be able to take care of you until Jose's available. I think it is going to be client facing in that regard soon enough. I think with more advanced reasoning, and that's around the corner within like the next 1 to 2 years, right? It's going to get to the point where it can handle its own. It can have conversations, reason through problems, especially if we program it with the right guidelines. Now, how do you program it? N8N or lane graph, whatever you might want to use, but it's still like those platforms tend to come and go. I think yes is the answer here.
Have any of your competitors use AI in a way that made you rethink your approach to how you're going to use it?
Tons, tons. What you guys are doing has opened my eyes to the idea of putting it on the client facing side and also on the uh, on the on the sales side as well, right? I think the idea of an AI voice receptionist that isn't just a chatbot but actually speaks and has empathy on some level, that can be game changing, especially considering that I think according to statistics, it's like 81% of companies are experimenting with it, but only around 17% are actually are going all in. So that means that a significant amount of the market is still lagging behind. So I get there faster, I use it faster, I know how to get around the guardrails faster, then it's an outpaced environment.
So when you're implementing these tools and when you continue to do so, how do you plan on measuring whether they're worth keeping or not?
I think there are a couple different ways to go about it, especially after interviewing so many AI engineers and how they're evaluating things, both agentic and like core foundational model engineers. I think fundamentally there has to be some sort of baseline that I need to consistently measure and observe like an agent's operational capabilities against. So if it's out there and it's talking and like I have a observing agent that maybe it's post call that starts to understand, okay, well, it slipped up here or slipped up there. Being able to have that sort of visibility is going to be key. Then evals against like baseline answers. So if I have customer support, client support, how do I I have to think through those workflows in a lot of ways. I allow it to reason through, but I have to give it guidelines and fallbacks in order to get it to work properly. I think that's ultimately what's going to be required, that observability and eval layer.
Okay. And when you continue to add these tools and see if they're worthwhile, what do you think is one thing that if an AI cloned your company, it wouldn't be able to replace? Or do you think that exists at all?
One tool where an AI,
If AI cloned your company, what human element of the company do you think could never be replicated? Or do you think they could all be replicated? And there's really,
that opens up a can of worms, better one way or another. I think long term, everybody's running to higher ground, right? I see it all over the board. People are saying, okay, it's in branding that an AI can't understand a brand or understand human uh, cognition or sentiment or any layer of humanity well enough in real time to be able to deliver on that. I don't think that's going to hold up for long. Eventually, eventually AI will be able to handle everything current, and it will be able to predict and decipher next steps because it can analyze millions of data points. We can analyze maybe 20. So it can analyze a lot more data points, create more nuanced responses. There is no higher ground. Everything is up for the taking for AI. But then we have to start talking about like, is it going to be a dystopian or utopian world? That that's something else, isn't it?
yeah, that's that's a big can of worms.
Exactly.
Um, so as you're implementing AI, your goal is to make people's dreams come true using AI technology. That's what it seems to be. So, on the other side, when this is all said and done and you've completed your goal, what would you want your company's obituary to say?
Hmm, that's an interesting one. Um, what would I want my company's obituary to say? This is gonna sound woo woo, but fuck it. Um, essentially, that it made people's lives better while they have everybody has one life to live, one way or another. Some people play it small, some people play it big. Better to play it big. Better to go for the biggest thing you can possibly go for to the point where people laugh at you. And it's only until people really laugh at you that you know that you're aiming big enough, honestly. Um, and I think the obituary should say something about how, regardless of how many times people laughed at our partners, at our clients, we stayed behind them the entire way through, and that we helped play a part in that dream come true that they envisioned.
Love it. And I'll ask you two more questions. One is a specific piece of advice, and one's more generalized. So, to start, what is something or what's one piece of advice that you would tell somebody who's looking to become successful in your industry specifically?
Set up some sort of CRVT framework, some sort of CRVT flow. CRT meaning it's like a take on, what somebody needs to know, like, and trust you in order to buy from you in business generally. CRVT, especially in B2B business, B2B tech, regardless of actually whether it's tech or not, you have to have conversations with people. You have to build relationships. You have to deliver value, and you have to create trust, right? So create a flow that generates a virtuous cycle within your business where you're constantly having conversations with the people you want to do business with, that builds relationships, deliver value to them, and then earn their trust. And ultimately, I think everything else takes care of itself.
Awesome. And what would be one piece of advice that you would give to anyone who's trying to be successful in life?
In life, all right, that's one I have to think about, because everybody says go for your passions, right? Sure, go for your passions. You need a certain amount of passion and belief, I think, in order to make something happen. I don't think you have to be passionate at something. I think you have to be great at something. And that greatness, maybe it's just one thing, one clearly defined vertical. Maybe you want to be a lawyer, maybe you want to be an accountant, maybe whatever you want to do. But there's also the intersection of different fields and disciplines. And there is a greatness that can be achieved within any one of those. And it becomes a bit of a corny piece of advice of, like, just be yourself. But when I think it's a larger point here. When you identify something that you're great at, that you think you can really be something in, go all in and don't stop. Even when you face going under, even when you have everybody in your life turn their back on you because they don't believe in you or they don't believe in your vision, the world isn't changed by people who stick with a status quo. They, and that isn't my quote, that's a quote from somewhere that I don't remember. But you have to be one of the contrarians in order to make something, in order to be anything useful in a lot of ways, especially when you want to be successful. And then you also always need the CRVT, right? Because it's one thing going all in on that one intersection, on that one area, and not stopping. It's also making sure that you bring people along with you and have the relationships to back you up along the way. So I think that was a long-winded
All right.
one, but yeah.
It was good. And where could people find you and your business if they're interested?
On LinkedIn primarily. It's Jose Cervino, if not Joe Cervino. I use Joe for outreach. It just gets better response rates, honestly. It's nothing about race. Maybe it is something about race, but I don't give a shit. Um, if not, then at CervinoEnterprises.com, but that will likely change in the foreseeable future.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on Nova Talks. And this has been episode 3.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.